As an almost 60-year-old man, I can tell you that being a man is complicated. It certainly has been for me. On the outside, people find me confident and easygoing. On the inside, not so much. When I was 12, I was bullied in a new school where I was desperately trying to fit in. The kids called me fat ass and laughed at me repeatedly. It sounds sort of common, right? Oddly, that experience has stayed with me, and I've unconsciously worn my shirt untucked to cover my butt ever since. I still do. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung defined shadow parts as feelings, desires that we repress because they're either unpleasant or even repulsive to how we want to think about ourselves or how we want others to perceive us. Now, these parts are pretty cunning, and they find a way to often reconstitute and reappear as unconscious behaviors, sort of like a game of whack-a-mole. Our mind is quite skilled at holding on to beliefs, feelings, trauma from previous life experience. The point is, even seemingly unimportant events in our life can leave lasting imprints. And we carry on through life with feelings of shame, embarrassment, and it can affect the rest of our life. This is particularly true for men who, at a young age, were taught to be strong and manly. If we're going to show any vulnerabilities or, God forbid, cry, well, you never want to show that. It shows us being weak. Aging is a process of increasing vulnerability. How many men here can remember the first time they woke up with a stiff back rather than a stiff erection? When we think about masculinity, what comes to mind? For many of us, we find it's a process that may be overwhelming. Some of us find it so overwhelming, we shy away and focus on what is withering away. And as a result, become depressed, uncommunicative, resentful. Some of us find it too unbearable and live in denial. You see these men walking around behaving inappropriately, sometimes offensively, behaving in ways that are defined from old definitions of masculinity or from repressed shame or moments of embarrassment. There is a path in between. There's a pathway towards what we call individuation. And individuation is a pathway where we learn to recognize the values and beliefs that are truly our own, rather than those that were internalized from outside influences and cultural norms. How many men here, or their friends, know people that are dating women half their age, driving fast cars, maybe engaging in athletics on the weekends and finding themselves injured, all chasing the eternal fountain of youth? Why do they act that way? Rob Willer is a Stanford professor, and he published a study in 2013 showing that men who feel masculine insecurity respond by extreme masculinity, including dominance hierarchies, homophobia, and the belief in male superiority. This is known as the male overcompensation thesis. And since aging is a process of increasing vulnerability, it's often seen as an existential threat to our masculinity. So no wonder men overcompensate. So what does it mean to be masculine? There's so many definitions out now. Where's the nuanced definitions? Well, conventionally, what are some conventional adjectives we think of when we think of masculinity? I invite you to notice how you respond as these adjectives wash over you. So courageous, protective, competitive, uncommunicative, angry, violent. If we limit ourselves to these conventionally defined definitions of masculinity, we often can close ourselves off to other ways of being, other ways that may both serve ourselves as well as our community, particularly in our second half of life. Perhaps we should consider adding, this is a both-and phenomena, adding emotionally intelligent. I know that's hard for some of us, but I encourage you to step in and lean into that. Vulnerable, loving, empathic, affectionate, attentive. Is it possible for us to be courageous and attentive? Do you have to give up your courageous strength if you're going to be vulnerable? I argue no. It's a both-and phenomena. And in this culture, as we're moving, we find ourselves drifting towards one extreme or the other, and I invite you to consider holding both. I was raised in a family where my mother had relaxed standards of discipline. My father was the heavy who used anger as discipline. And like most of us, we find ourselves, whether we want to or not, becoming like our parents, right? And I found myself becoming like my father in how I responded to things. As an adult, I respond quickly with anger when challenged. And worst of all, I was harder and stricter unconsciously with my daughter than I ever should have been. I found my inability to control her emasculating. And I don't know if anyone else can relate to this phenomenon. And in disciplining her, I would escalate to shouting, pounding my fist on the table. I'd even issue punishments that far exceeded the crime, like, you misbehaved, your phone's taken away for a month. And of course, her mother would say, are you really going to be able to do that? I was really exhibiting toxic masculinity, and I was clueless until I wasn't. The wake-up call came when her mother stepped in and called me out for my emotionally abusive behavior. And it took 2 years of hard work and a commitment to change. I was forced to look at my unconscious knee-jerk reactions, and they were everywhere. And I eventually decided I'm not going to live my life by responding to challenges with anger, and I damn well am not going to be the heavy like my father was. I had to leverage courage, strength, even competitiveness to really explore my shadow parts. I also returned to my lifelong practice of martial arts. And in that process, it allowed me to really take my unhealthy emotions and discharge them, transform them into more healthy ways of being. I also learned to cultivate my mind-body skills, noticing if my throat's tightening or my peripheral vision is narrowing, I'm starting to get emotionally triggered. Time to take a pause, step away, and usually that triggering is my stuff. It's my side of the street. In short, I moved from being run by my emotions to being able to separate my emotions from my reactions, to create that pause. The stimulus comes, there's a pause there before I respond. And in that lies our freedom. In my medical practice, I have 4 basic strategies that I could recommend for people to live with grace and skill. The first is a 360 review. I encourage people to both do self-inquiry as well as seek honest feedback from others. The first step is, and this is hard for many of us, to listen more and talk less. And find ourselves when we're in these emotionally triggered situations, those are the moments to say, like, what's irritating me most is probably some unresolved issues that I need to sort of do some deep inquiry about. And then reach out to friends and loved ones and seek honest feedback from them. Lean on them. Connect. Leverage them. And seek psychotherapy if that may be a benefit to you as well. Number 2, service. To engage in service. There's no better way to feel relevance, purpose, and a sense of awe in your life by leveraging your experience, your wisdom to help others, help those that are less fortunate, and put some good into the world. It really comes right back at you. Number 3, finding more purpose and meaning. We spend much of our life raising children, being a parent, being a partner, being a professional, and as we age, some of those start to shift. So how can we start to reflect back on ourselves? And I encourage people to identify the values that are most meaningful to you. For me, they're integrity, authenticity, and temperance. Lord knows I need temperance. What are yours? And finally, finding community. Find a community that can align with your values, that can support your sense of purpose, that can help you become a better version of your authentic self. For me, it's my martial arts community. They hold me accountable. They're clear in how they don't hold back, you know. I can tell you, it takes work, but I guarantee if you do this work, you'll feel more ease and fulfillment in your life. You'll have better relations with your loved ones, and you'll live a much more fulfilling life. You may still have a stiff back, however. It's your life, it's your choice. I can tell you it was worth it for me. This is your journey. Enjoy your journey. And thank you for listening.